You're listening to Sports Connections with David Smale, the show that brings you a fun and intimate look into connections throughout sports. Now here's your host, David Smale.
Dr. Brandon Martin has been the athletic director at the University of Missouri-Kansas City for a little more than 2 years. A rising star in college athletics, Martin's leadership helped change the culture within the athletic department as his positive energy, passion, and strategic vision has helped elevate the Roos' momentum on and off the field. As chair of the Community Outreach/Auxiliary Events Committee, Martin assisted in identifying university-wide opportunities for innovation and investment that lead to revenue growth through auxiliary and external services to advance the mission of the university. For his extraordinary leadership, Martin also was named in the top 100 most influential African Americans in Los Angeles in 2017. Brandon, welcome to Sports Connections.
Thank you so much, David. Delighted to be here.
So how do you like Kansas City after 2.5 years? It's been a crazy 2.5 years.
Yeah, it has been, but I love Kansas City, everything about it, the people, the location, the potential, and it's been a great place for my family. And my kids have enjoyed their schools. My wife has a job at Metropolitan Community College, in fact, and she's enjoying that. And so we've made a quick transition to Kansas City, and it's a great sports town.
Yeah.
And of course, go Chiefs, go Chiefs. It's good, and there's so many people who want to see UMKC be successful.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased to observe that. From an athletic standpoint, there's no ceiling to how high UMKC can go. As you noted, we made the transition from the WAC conference into the Summit League, and we have aspirations to go beyond that. We have a very attractive market, and we have some of the best athletes in the city, in the region, and in this geographic footprint. So as an athletic director, Kansas City checks a lot of boxes for me, and it's been a very pleasant experience up to this point.
A lot of people would say it might have been a hard transition to come from Los Angeles to Kansas City, but before being in LA, you were in Norman, Oklahoma, which is a suburb of Oklahoma City. So it's not that much of a transition for you, correct?
Sure. I mean, the people make the place, David. And I did have the opportunity to work for Joe Castiglione at the University of Oklahoma. And, from a geographic and cultural standpoint, it was very similar. And I think that prepared me for the transition. And so, again, everything that I need, my family needs, we have here in Kansas City. We hope to be here for a long time. It's just been a pleasant experience.
I talked to Kathy Nelson not too long ago. Of course, she's the executive director of the Kansas City Sports Commission and Foundation. And she said that Kansas City will be lucky to hang on to you because you're an up-and-comer. She said, how do you respond to praise such as that?
Yeah, well, kudos to Kathy. I mean, Kathy is a trailblazer in the sports community here in Kansas City. And so Kathy has been very supportive of our mission in city athletics. She's been very personally supportive of a lot of things that I'm trying to get done, and has been instrumental in connecting me with the movers and shakers in Kansas City, the people that I need to get in front of to spell out the vision and talk about where do we want to be, not only right now, but where do we want to be year 3, year 5? What are our goals, and how this vision based on comprehensive excellence is unique,
right,
and tailor-made for Kansas City. And so she's been a huge ally for me, and she's the best.
Now, you've had success everywhere you've been. So I've got a 2-part question for you, and they sound similar, but there's a slight difference. So I'll ask them both, and then we'll come back to the first. What drives you and what inspires you? So let's start with what drives you.
Yeah. What drives me is the opportunity to get better each day. And We all have the same amount of hours. We all have the same amount of minutes, but it's all about what we do at that time. And, I strive to be better than I was yesterday, last week and last month. And so the opportunity to be excellent really drives me. The opportunity to compete with myself, the person who I was the previous day. That's what drives me. What drives me is the potential of Kansas City, the potential of UMKC, who we can be, particularly as you single out one program, our men's basketball program, who we can be given our resources, given the infrastructure that we can provide to the program, given the wealth that we have here in Kansas City, and given all of the people who have quietly supported our athletics program for so many years and been so loyal to what we've been trying to get done. That's what drives me.
Okay, and it's similar, but the difference is, to me, what drives you is more internal. What inspires you is external. So maybe the better question would be who inspires you, but let's keep it the consistent. Say what inspires you.
Yeah, well, it's just the opportunity to be a good spouse, a good husband, the opportunity to leave a legacy for my children is important to me. The opportunity to connect with students at UMKC is important and vital to my personal mission, not student athletes, but the larger student body. And the opportunity to serve Kansas City is important. And I understand that I'm on assignment here in Kansas City that has so many different connections and so many different tentacles outside of athletics. And so that's motivation, inspiration, and purpose all looped into one.
And one of the things that inspired me, using that same word, about you in talking to people who know you and reading your bio, is that as an athletic director, it would be really easy to focus just on sports, focus on the success of your teams, to support your coaches and stuff like that. But I'm seeing that your vision, your motivation extends far beyond athletics, specifically into the academic side. How do you look at your role different from a typical AD?
Well, if we use a basketball analogy, I feel that I'm a higher ed administrator first, and I'm a person who can play all 5 positions on the floor. So if you tailor that to UMKC specifically, of course, I'm the director of athletics, but I'm also a vice chancellor. I'm also a professor, executive in residence in 3 academic units on campus. I'm also a mentor for students on campus in the realm of student affairs. I'm also an advocate for the university. I'm also a fundraiser, both inside athletics and for the larger campus community. And I'm also a marketer. I'm also a champion for the campus in the community to talk about the great things that Chancellor Agrawal is doing, the great things the provost has put in place in terms of academic initiatives, the great work that the faculty has done, and the great work that the staff and the administration has done collectively for the campus to make Kansas City a better place.
But why is academics such an integral part? I mean, those are all, I don't mean to discredit what you're saying, but it almost, again, I don't mean to be disrespectful. It almost sounds rehearsed. And I know you've got to carry all of those banners, and you've got to be prepared to answer that question and not leave one of them out. So I know that's why you answered the way you did. But the thing that really struck me is that academics, and obviously Missouri Kansas City, as you've rebranded it, is an academic institution first and foremost. Why is academics such an integral part of everything you're doing?
Well, when I decided to get a terminal doctorate degree, it was important for me as my identity as a person who was going to work in higher education, specifically in athletics, to not be viewed as strictly a person who was a director of athletics, who scheduled games, put together marketing campaigns,
right,
and raised dollars. Okay. The former jock who decided to get in athletics, who said, okay, this is my niche and this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
For me, it was a lot more comprehensive. And I wanted to leave an indelible mark on higher education at large, but more specifically, wherever I was working. So right now it's at UMKC. So I would be doing campus a disservice if I was solely focused on athletics, not being a mentor, not being a faculty member, not being an advocate, not being a person in the community who could advocate the mission of UMKC. And so the other thing that I'll say is that if you look at the professional schools at UMKC, I mean, they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we have so many alumni, you know, in the campus community in this region who want to support the campus, who want to learn more about what some of the great things that we're doing. And it's just, you know, we have to take it one alumni to get them up to speed and educated and inspired to support us to take us to a whole nother level.
Your role was expanded last August. Just talk about the difference of being, again, trying to be respectful, just the athletic director to being the vice chancellor and athletic director. What new responsibilities did you have? Yeah,
sure. So I co-lead a task force with the deputy provost, Christy Holsinger, and it's a retention and graduation task force for underrepresented students, students of color, transfer students, first generation students. And we have 4 subcommittees that we oversee. And it's our goal to increase the graduation rates, the retention rates of students of color. And so it's a direct line to both the provost and the chancellor and student affairs for that matter. And so I couldn't be more impressed with the collective brain power that we have on this task force. And it's been really refreshing for me to be involved in.
Would it be a fair way to summarize the whole thing? Is that this task force is championed with or is challenged with the idea of creating the whole student rather than a more segmented student where maybe just a student athlete with focus on athletics, or maybe just an art major with focus on art, but not the rest of it. Is that fair to say you want to create a whole student?
I think that's fair to say, David, but also one of the things that Chancellor Agarwal has talked about is our UMKC Forward initiative. And in order for UMKC Forward to be successful, we have to address those subpopulations of students. And, you know, again, we have a great collection of administrators on campus and faculty involved in this. And we've gotten great feedback from students on we need to proceed from a programmatic standpoint moving forward. You recently, I'm sure you were a big part of it, rebranding, you meaning the university, rebranded to most times just be called Kansas City instead of University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC. Though us old folks who've been around since the 60s think of it as UMKC still. But it seems like you're at a bit of a disadvantage from an attention standpoint especially with athletics.
three Power Five schools within a 2-hour drive: Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. As the director of athletics, and in the broader sense, how do you deal with the fact that there are three major universities this close, and it's hard to get media attention and public attention?
David, I've taken a different approach to that.
Okay.
I've taken a sort of a non-deficit perspective on that. I believe that UMKC, Kansas City Athletics, we have to have our own identity. And we have Kansas City. So even though we do have the competition with those three institutions, we have so much potential and so much talent in our local area surrounds campus. And we have to get beyond sort of an inferior identity, approach, mindset for us to reach that Wichita State level, that Creighton level that we know we can get to. So it has to be a very comprehensive approach. It has to be a very committed approach. And everyone on campus has to be on board with where we're trying to go. From the vice president of student affairs to the person in the English department to the person in university marketing and branding. Collectively, we all have to come together to get to where we're trying to go. So if we focus on the competition, we'll get lost. We'll get lost in competing against someone who has a $100 million budget, right? We don't want to focus on that. We want to focus on how can we maximize the $15 million or so dollars that we have to create the best student athlete experience, but also create additional infrastructure and resources for our athletic department that's going to be attractive for student athletes in the Kansas City region and in this geographic footprint in the Summit.
So instead of comparing yourself with what you don't have, you're not going to get the ESPN coverage on a regular basis. Some of the things that those other schools have, you're focusing on the fact that none of those schools are actually in Kansas City, a metropolitan area of 2 million. Manhattan's 50,000, Lawrence is 75,000, Columbia 100,000 or whatever. You've got Kansas City now on your jerseys and part of your identity, a main part of your identity, and you're taking advantage of that.
And some of those schools, David, have been guilty of putting up billboards in Kansas City, claiming their turf and their territory.
Yeah.
And as a competitor, I took offense to that because I know the potential of UMKC, and all we need is a couple winning seasons to prove to folks in Kansas City to have ownership of their only Division I team. That's important.
If you're the optimist that I'm learning that you are, it's probably an advantage that you have three in different directions than if you just had Kansas, which is 45 minutes away, and nobody else competing with them. So they have to worry about Kansas State and Missouri, and they're not maybe focusing on you. Where if you just had one, they could just kind of dismiss you. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair to say, David. And there's always been, I want to go back to this mindset of, who UMKC cannot be.
Right.
I've chosen to have the mindset of who we can be.
Yeah.
And spell out a vision and have a detailed plan on how we can get to that place. We understand it's going to take time. This is not an overnight process.
Right.
But why not us? Why can't we be that Division I team where we have the 67% of alumni in this region that they're rooting for, that they're standing in line to get into the Roos games?
Yeah.
It's the vision where we have this student body who are camping out for Midnight Madness.
Yeah.
And sleeping bags, waiting to get in. That's the vision that I have. Now, it's going to take some work because that's more of a mindset shift. That's a cultural shift. And that's commitment. And with my Power 5 experience, I understand how to get there.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time, but we have some great people who share my same vision.
And you don't have football, I was going to ask you is how much of a challenge is that, but you're going to turn that back around and you're going to say, hey, that's not a 500-pound gorilla that we have to keep feeding all the time.
That's right.
That's an advantage to not have football in this case, isn't it?
It is, because college football is all focused on television revenue.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a good football team, then it can be a detriment to you.
Yeah.
And it can just suck all the juice out of your budget, and it takes money away from the sports that you can be good at. And in our case, we don't have football, and that's an advantage that we have. And we know that both of our basketball programs are our flagship sports, and we're committed to that. I mean, JC has done a phenomenal job this season, transitioning fresh off of a championship in the WAC. First time that we've advanced an NC2A tournament, school history. She's done a phenomenal job. But Billy has done a terrific job of transitioning and recruiting kids throughout Kansas City. And that's one of the things that was void upon me taking the job. And one of the things that I wanted to do was build a fence around the city and capture all of those kids that we can get. Now, we might not be able to get that same kid that KU is going to get, and that's okay. But if we can get that 3.5, 4-star kid to buy into Kansas City athletics and buy into our vision and believe in the process of what we're trying to get done, then we'll be successful.
And I'm guessing that if you could put a face to your target audience, the target audience that you're not reaching now that you want to reach, it's me. I went to a small college in Michigan, my undergrad, but I went to graduate school at K-State. So my allegiances are in Manhattan. Therefore, I don't like KU and MU. So I like it when they're struggling. But the person who lives in Kansas City, who may have an allegiance to these other universities, but you want them also as a Kansas Cityan to line up, maybe not camp out, I'm too old for that, but to line up and want to get tickets. I've been to games at Swinney Rec, and it's a great facility. You're right there, in the action. And so if I'm the person that you're going after, the sports fan who wants to see good, high quality athletics that's not necessarily affiliated with my university, but with my hometown.
I think that's well said, David. And the operative word is engagement. We want folks throughout Kansas City to be engaged in Kansas City athletics in some form or fashion. Kansas Cityans, they love Kansas City and everything about it. And so why not support UMKC, Kansas City athletics? Whether it's buying a ticket to a game, whether it's buying a t-shirt, whether it's joining the Rue Athletic Fund, it's making a major donation to one of our programs or to our general fund. Some form of engagement, that's what we want for folks in Kansas City to own our team.
Yeah.
And even though you might have that affiliation with KU, with K-State, with Mizzou, some other institution, but you are a part of the fabric of Kansas City. So come out and support us and give us a shot. Come out and see what's going on. We have some great facility renovations. We had a great fan experience pre-COVID,
right.
But it's really something that we want to rally Kansas Cityans to be a part of.
And maybe a key, not tell you how to do your job because you're obviously far better at than I would be, but maybe if you could get Patrick Mahomes to a game, because I know T-Bone's attendance went up, and I know people paid more attention at Kansas Speedway. You get him there, leading the cheers, wearing a Ruse T-shirt, and there's going to be a lot of attention. So if you can swing that one, that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, what's interesting, David, is that his cousin is on our basketball team.
Really?
Sam Martin is he's on our roster, and they're first cousins. So since Sam has joined our program, that's been one of my goals is get Mahomes to a game. And I know there's so many barriers to get to him, but if he were to just make some sort of declaration that he's supporting the Roos, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And it would get the attention of a lot of people, especially a lot of Chiefs fans in the city, to support our program. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Now, you talked about JC Hoyt earlier, and I've talked about the fact that I know her. I'm very, very fond of that young lady. I'm guessing that it's going to be hard to keep her from being snatched up by a Power 5 program. And you've probably got other coaches in similar situations. What kind of a challenge is it to keep coaches with that kind of ability at what is unfortunately commonly referred to as a mid-major program?
Good question, David. One of the benefits that I have of working at two Power 5 institutions, University of Oklahoma and USC, is it gave me the ability and the foresight to predict situations like last season, where JC was on such an upward trajectory with her program that I knew that she would be a hot commodity in the market. So I was proactive even before the season was over to locking her into a long-term contract.
Great.
Now, that's not to say that if she has success in the Summit League, that it won't prevent a Power 5 school from coming. But I did want to, number one, provide her security and her knowing that her athletic director believes in her. Two, I felt like I owed it to the student athletes who were returning to have their coach back. Number three, given that this was the first time that we advanced to the NC2A tournament, I owed it to our fans to have her come back. And so I was proactive with retaining her, and it's been one of the best decisions that I've made since being AD.
And I'm guessing that when other situations like that arise, because you've talked about the quality of your coaches in all your programs, you'll take the same approach. You'll be proactive rather than waiting for somebody to make an offer and you say, well, we can't afford that, but we sure are nice people. Why don't you stay for half that? You're going to be proactive. You're not going to be able to compete if Bill Self retires and they come after your men's coach. You're not going to be able to compete with KU. But being proactive might cause a little bit of pause for those coaches to think twice before just jumping at the first Power 5 opportunity. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's a good thing for people to want your coaches. That means that means that you're in the right direction. When people don't want your coaches, that means that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so no athletic director wants transients in their program. High turnover. It's you want stability. You want something to be able to promote and sell to student athletes that's stable. However, being at a mid-major, when you have coaches like JC, you know that the inevitable is going to happen. Yeah. So how do you best prepare for that?
I want to talk to you about goals, and I'm going to do this three ways. First, long-term goals for the university in general, a little more specifically for the athletic department, and then finally for you personally. So let's start with the university in general, with your roles that are beyond athletics. What goals do you see for Kansas City athletics, or for the university 5-10 years from now?
One is to fortify the connection within the community with the goals and aspirations of campus. So in other words, bridging the gap between campus and the local community, and making sure that we can benefit from, all of the corporations, all of the businesses that are within 5 minutes away from campus, making sure that we can make inroads into the Black community as well. That's a huge gap. Making UMKC be attractive for kids in the Kansas City public schools. Instead of looking at KU or Mizzou or K-State, why not just go right down the street to UMKC? In terms of marketing and branding, I have goals of us even having a huge esports program at UMKC that's connected to the School of Engineering. There are 64,000 high school students who are gamers in Kansas City. So why can't we have one of the best esports program, which is going to be another way to market and promote to get more students attracted to our brand and what we're trying to get done. So from a campus standpoint, that's what I would say. I would also argue that it would be great for us to get more respect within the University of Missouri system. We understand that Mizzou is the flagship program within the system, but we're Kansas City. And so to get respect, not only from an athletic standpoint, but from an enrollment standpoint, from having the best disciplines and programs, and to be a competitor, to be a formidable competitor with some of our affiliate schools within the system. So from an institution standpoint, those would be my goals.
And then from an athletic standpoint, competing for championships in the Summit League, making the occasional run into postseason in the NCAA. Those are obvious. Anything else specific to athletics that you have as a goal that may surprise some people?
Sure. My goal is for us to be a top 50 mid-major program, Division I program nationally, top 50. That would involve not only having championships in the Summit League, but also being attractive for leagues like the Missouri Valley. That's a big one. I think it goes without saying that us having appearances in the NC2A tournament in basketball would transform not only the respective programs, but the university at large. Soccer is also an opportunity. You mentioned Sporting KC earlier. We have a connection and a partnership with Sporting KC, and I don't see any barriers and any challenges in us being a top 25 soccer program, both on the women and men's side.
Huh.
As you know, we've had success on the women's side, but I think on the men's side, there's also an opportunity. So, of course, we talk about comprehensive excellence. We want to be excellent in all our sports, but there's 4 sports where if we have the necessary resources and the infrastructure, we can be one of the top mid-major programs nationally.
I've been to a couple of soccer games at your facility, and it's not like Air Force Academy where you have mountain backdrops or University of Miami or even Barry University, which is Division II in Miami. So you don't have the beach, but you've got a really scenic facility for soccer for a mid-major program, don't you? And
yes.
I'll bet you as you're recruiting players, they walk and go, "This is cool." Talk
Absolutely.
about your facility with soccer and the advantage that brings to you.
Yeah, we have a tremendous facility, and on I believe it's the southwest side, it overlooks the plaza.
Yeah.
So even though we don't have the beach and we don't have some of the other scenic opportunities some of the other schools have, we do have the plaza, which is sort of one of the anchors of Kansas City.
Yeah.
And so my vision is to have a premium VIP space where we can have some of our donors be able to view the soccer game, but also we can entertain them as they overlook the plaza. That's a vision that I have. The other vision that I have is to capitalize on a pipeline of talent that Sporting KC has in their system, and keep our kids home. And so instead of that top collegiate player going to North Carolina, going to Florida, going to a Power 5 school, why not build a pipeline of talent that can come to Kansas City? So there's a huge opportunity. We just installed a new turf field, which was a major facility project for us, that we have used in recruiting, and a lot of our returning players are really pleased that we have that turf, and it's really sharp. We have the new logo, right? Center field, and it's been awesome. So we've also taken a step in the soccer realm as well.
Yeah, and I guess with short of putting in fountains all around the facility, you can't be more Kansas City than overlooking the plaza. That's certainly a trademark of Kansas City. I want to ask the last question here. For you personally, for goals, and I know you have to be careful, even if you aspire to be the next Mark Emmert, president of the NCAA, you have to pay respect to the university that employs you right now. But so in general terms, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years?
Well, I can say this, David. My personal goals all are around impact. And so wherever I end up 5, 10, 15 years from now, I want to have an impact on the people in my environment. And that starts with my family, with my wife and my kids. Being a God-fearing man, it starts with that first. And then it transitions into making sure that I'm a leader for my staff, that I'm a mentor for my student athletes. I'm a model for a kid who says, I'm not sure what Dr. Martin does, but you know what? I'm really curious, and maybe I want to be an athletics director one day. And so that's important to me. It's important to instill hope in kids who have gotten to UMKC and they have so much fear and maybe so much trauma and so much adversity, and they have doubt that they can't be successful. It's important for me to give them that hope that they can be successful. And lastly, I would say, if I'm blessed with an opportunity to transition away from Kansas City, I want to make sure that I've left an indelible mark in the city. So it wasn't just, Brandon came here, he built up our athletic program, and now we got a new AD here and we can just keep moving. No, you know what? He touched the lives of students, and he made a mark with the faculty, and he instilled programs that are long-term and not short-term. And so that's how I would answer that, David.
That's great. And I think you read my notes, because my very last question is talk about your family. And I agree with you. You can do great things at the university. You can do great things. You can lead Kansas City to NCAA tournaments with hiring the right coaches and stuff. But if you fail impacting your own family, you failed. So just talk about your family and just
Sure.
Pump them up a little bit.
Yeah, well, it starts with, my wife, Rosemary. As I mentioned earlier, she's the chief human resource officer at Metropolitan Community College. And she's been in that role for a year. I have 3 children. I have a daughter at Arizona State University. She's in her second year, and she's aspiring to be an attorney. So she's sort of like the lobbyist in our family. My daughter Riley, she's in 6th grade, and she's our athlete, and she plays club volleyball for the Mavs actually in Olathe. And so, in fact, she has a tournament this weekend around Super Bowl time. And then my son Brandon, and he's 8, and he probably has the biggest IQ in the house, probably the smartest person. And he's my engineer, just the way his brain thinks, and very formulaic and extremely bright. And so that's my anchor, and I'm proud of each and every one of them.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining us very much. I've enjoyed this. Looking forward to when COVID goes away and I can come back to games. I love coming and watching JC coach, and look forward to getting to know your men's coach as well, and coming back to soccer games. And it's just, I have you know my uncle and know his connection with the university, and through him, I've taken an additional interest in your program. So I'm looking forward to getting out there and seeing you in person and connecting. But thank you as a Kansas Citian. Thank you for the role that you're playing and putting our university at the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, David. And you mentioned your uncle. He's been a huge advocate of our programs for many years, and we're lucky to have big supporters like him. And I'm happy to return on your show anytime. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Sports Connections with David Smale. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the show from your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more about David Smale and his work by visiting davidsmalebooks.com. Don't forget to join us weekly for new episodes. Until next time.